There are moments in your life when everything seems to align. When the right person appears at exactly the right time. When an opportunity emerges from nowhere. When a door opens just as another closes. You call it coincidence, luck, fate. But what if I told you there's something far more profound at work? Long before history as you know it began, there was a civilization that understood the invisible threads that weave through every moment of your existence. Not the myth you've been told, but a place where the fundamental laws of reality were not just studied, but lived. One of those laws was so powerful, it could reshape the trajectory of any life, and so threatening to those who would keep humanity in the dark that it was systematically erased from every record, every memory, every whisper of ancient knowledge. And yet, here you are, which means this law has found you. The Atlanteans called it the sacred thread, what we now glimpse only in fragments as the law of cause and effect. But their understanding went deeper than physics, deeper than philosophy. They knew this wasn't just a principle. It was the very heartbeat of existence itself. Tonight, in this quiet moment between worlds, I'm going to share with you what they erased. Not because I have permission, but because the time has come for this knowledge to return to those ready to receive it. You may have found this video by chance, but the Atlanteans would have smiled at that word, chance. For them, your presence here tonight is the perfect effect of causes you set in motion long, long ago. Are you ready to remember what you once knew? Picture, if you will, a city that existed not just in space, but in harmony with the invisible currents of creation itself. Atlantis was never merely a place. It was a state of consciousness, made manifest in crystal spires and flowing gardens, where every structure resonated with the frequencies of universal law. The Atlanteans were not gods, as some stories claim. They were not aliens, as others insist. They were human beings, like you and me, but human beings who had remembered something we have forgotten. That reality responds to consciousness, like water responds to the moon. In their great libraries, not built of stone, but of crystallized light, they studied what they called the eternal principles. These were not inventions of their minds, but observations of how existence actually operates beneath the surface of what we can see and touch. Of all these principles, none was more fundamental than the sacred thread, the understanding that every action, every thought, every intention sends ripples through the fabric of reality itself. They saw what we have forgotten, that nothing in this universe exists in isolation. Everything is connected to everything else by invisible threads of causation that span not just space, but time itself. The Atlanteans didn't worship this law. They lived it. They breathed it. They structured their entire civilization around it. Imagine a society where every person understood that their thoughts today would shape their tomorrow, where every word spoken was chosen with the knowledge that it would return to the speaker transformed, magnified, carrying with it the weight of consequence. This was not superstition. This was spiritual science of the highest order. They observed that causes exist on multiple levels simultaneously. A harsh word doesn't just create the immediate effect of hurt feelings. It sends vibrations through the emotional realm, the mental realm, the spiritual realm. It touches not just the person it's directed toward, but the speaker, the witnesses, even those who will encounter the residual energy days or years later. The Atlanteans mapped these invisible currents like we map ocean streams. They could trace the path of a single unkind thought as it rippled outward, creating effects that would manifest generations later. They could follow the trajectory of a single act of compassion as it amplified through countless lives, eventually returning to its source, magnified 1,000-fold. But this knowledge carried a responsibility that few were prepared to accept. To truly understand the sacred thread meant accepting that you are not a victim of circumstance, but a creator of destiny. Every condition in your life, the joyful and the painful, the abundant and the lacking, exists as the perfect effect of causes you have set in motion. This truth threatened those who preferred to rule through fear, through the illusion of powerlessness, through the convenient lie that life happens to you rather than through you. And so when Atlantis fell, not to flood or fire, but to the gradual forgetting of its own wisdom, the sacred thread was the first knowledge to be suppressed. Not destroyed, for truth cannot be destroyed, but hidden, fragmented, scattered like seeds in the wind, waiting for the right soil, the right season, the right consciousness to bloom again. Let me share with you the heart of what the Atlanteans understood, stripped of mystery and delivered in terms your modern mind can grasp. The sacred thread operates on a principle so simple, yet so profound, that it took their greatest minds centuries to fully comprehend its implications. Every cause produces an effect, and every effect becomes a cause for something else. But here's what makes this different from the mechanical cause and effect you learned in school. The Atlanteans understood that causes exist on multiple planes of reality simultaneously. Think of it this way. When you drop a stone into still water, you see the ripples spreading outward in perfect circles. What you don't see is that the stone also sends vibrations through the earth beneath the water, changes the pressure in the air above, and even affects the gravitational field in ways too subtle for your instruments to measure. Your thoughts, your words, your actions work exactly the same way. The immediate effect, what you can see and measure, is just the surface ripple. Beneath that, invisible currents are carrying your intentions into realms you cannot perceive, where they gather momentum, attract similar energies, and eventually manifest back into your visible reality as the circumstances of your life. The Atlanteans identified 3 primary levels of causation. The physical plane. This is what your science understands. You plant a seed, you get a tree. You study diligently, you gain knowledge. You exercise regularly, you build strength. Cause and effect in the material world follows predictable patterns because matter is relatively dense and slow to change. The mental, emotional plane. This is where most of your real power lies, though few recognize it. Every thought you think is a cause that sets energy in motion. Every emotion you feel is a broadcasting signal that attracts similar frequencies back to you. When you consistently think thoughts of limitation, you literally program your subconscious mind to notice and create more experiences of limitation. When you cultivate genuine gratitude, you attune yourself to receive more experiences worthy of gratitude. The spiritual plane. Here is where the Atlanteans found the deepest mysteries. At this level, your intentions, the deepest motivations behind your actions, create what they called karmic momentum. These are causes that may not produce their full effects for years, decades, or even lifetimes. But they are perhaps the most powerful forces in your existence. Here's a simple example that demonstrates all three levels. Imagine you're walking down the street and you see someone who appears to be homeless, asking for help. On the physical plane, if you give them money, the immediate effect is that they have resources they didn't have before. Simple cause and effect. On the mental, emotional plane, your act of generosity strengthens neural pathways in your brain associated with compassion and abundance. You literally rewire yourself to notice more opportunities to be generous and to feel more grateful for what you have. Simultaneously, the person receiving your help experiences not just the physical benefit, but an emotional reminder that kindness exists in the world. On the spiritual plane, your intention behind the action, whether you gave from genuine compassion or from guilt, whether you saw the person as equal to you or as lesser, creates subtle, energetic patterns that will attract similar experiences into your life. If you gave with an open heart, seeing yourself in that person, you've strengthened your connection to the universal field of abundance. If you gave from pity or obligation, you've reinforced patterns of separation and scarcity. The Atlanteans understood that most people focus only on the physical level of cause and effect, which is why they feel powerless to change their circumstances. They see their current situation as a fixed reality, rather than as the perfect effect of countless previous causes, most of which originated in their own consciousness. But here's the liberating truth. If your current reality is the effect of previous causes, then new causes, starting right now, can create new effects. Newton discovered that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. But the Atlanteans knew something Newton didn't. The reaction doesn't have to look anything like the original action. A thought of love can produce a windfall of opportunity. A moment of forgiveness can heal a chronic illness. A decision to see beauty can literally attract more beautiful experiences into your life. This isn't magic. It's not wishful thinking. It's the natural operation of consciousness in a universe that is far more responsive to inner states than most people could ever imagine. Let me show you this sacred thread at work in the fabric of everyday life, so you can begin to recognize its patterns in your own experience. Sarah came to understand the sacred thread through heartbreak. For years, she'd attracted the same type of relationship, men who seemed caring at first, but gradually became distant, critical, unavailable. She blamed bad luck, timing, maybe even the idea that all the good ones are taken. But then Sarah began to notice something unsettling. The way these men treated her was remarkably similar to the way she treated herself. When she looked in the mirror, the voice in her head was critical. "You're getting older. You should lose weight. Why can't you be more like her?" When she made mistakes, she was harsh and unforgiving with herself. When she accomplished something, she immediately focused on what she could have done better. The sacred thread was operating perfectly. Her internal relationship, the constant stream of self-criticism and conditional self-love, was the cause. The men who mirrored this pattern back to her were the effect. The breakthrough came when Sarah decided to experiment. For 30 days, she committed to speaking to herself the way she would speak to a beloved friend. When the critical voice arose, she would gently redirect it. "You're learning. You're doing your best. You are worthy of love exactly as you are." The changes started internally. She felt calmer, more confident, more at peace with herself. But then, something remarkable happened. Within 2 months, she met David, a man who treated her with the same kindness and respect she was learning to show herself. The sacred thread had responded to new causes by producing new effects. Sarah's external relationships transformed because her internal relationship had transformed first. Marcus worked in a job he hated for 7 years, feeling trapped by financial obligations and convinced that opportunities for someone with his background were limited. He spent his days complaining to coworkers, his evenings watching television to numb his frustration, and his weekends dreading Monday's return. What Marcus didn't recognize was that his constant focus on what was wrong with his situation was a powerful cause, magnetically attracting more experiences of limitation and frustration. The shift began with a simple decision. Instead of spending his lunch breaks complaining, Marcus started spending them learning. He watched online courses, read industry publications, and began developing skills that genuinely interested him. This wasn't just career development. It was energetic transformation. His daily causes shifted from focusing on what's wrong to focusing on growth and possibility. The sacred thread responded accordingly. Within 6 months, Marcus noticed he was having different conversations at work. Not about problems, but about solutions. Colleagues began seeking his input on projects. His supervisor noticed his improved attitude and expanding skills. The opportunity that changed everything came through a casual conversation with someone he met at a coffee shop. Someone who was there because Marcus had started taking walking meetings with himself during lunch instead of sitting in the break room radiating frustration. Marcus's new job didn't just offer better pay and conditions. It aligned with his values and utilized talents he'd forgotten he possessed. The sacred thread had woven together countless small causes. Each choice to learn instead of complain. Each decision to grow instead of stagnate. Into a perfect tapestry of opportunity. Belina's relationship with the sacred thread began with a diagnosis that terrified her: early-stage diabetes. Her doctor's words echoed in her mind: genetic predisposition, inevitable progression, lifelong medication management. For weeks, Elena felt like a victim of her biology, her family history, her genes. But then she remembered something her grandmother used to say: the body keeps the score of every thought you think and every emotion you feel. Elena began to investigate the causes behind her condition, not just the physical ones, but the mental and emotional patterns that might have contributed to her body's current state. She discovered that for years, she'd been living in a constant state of stress and overwhelm. She ate not for nourishment, but for comfort, often while working or watching stressful news. She exercised sporadically and reluctantly. Most significantly, she'd been carrying deep resentment toward family members, anger that felt like a constant weight in her chest. Elena realized that her current health was the perfect effect of thousands of small causes. Each meal eaten in stress, each unprocessed emotion, each night of insufficient sleep, each day of choosing worry over peace. But if her current condition was an effect, then new causes could create new effects. Elena began a gentle but consistent transformation. She started each day with 10 minutes of gratitude practice, systematically releasing the resentments she'd carried for years. She began preparing meals with mindfulness and love, treating food as medicine rather than distraction. She chose movement that brought her joy rather than punishment. Most importantly, she began to see her body not as a machine that had broken down, but as a faithful servant that had been responding perfectly to the signals she'd been sending it. The changes were gradual but undeniable. Her blood sugar levels stabilized. Her energy increased. Her sleep deepened. Within 18 months, her doctor was amazed to find her diabetes in complete remission. The sacred thread had operated exactly as the Atlanteans understood. Elena's new causes, thoughts of appreciation, emotions of peace, actions of self-care, had produced new effects in every cell of her body. David's story illustrates perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of the sacred thread: the relationship between inner states and outer circumstances. For years, David struggled financially, despite working long hours and possessing considerable skills. He lived in a constant state of anxiety about money, checking his bank balance obsessively, making decisions based on fear of scarcity, and feeling resentful toward those who seemed to have abundance effortlessly. What David didn't understand was that his fearful focus on lack was a powerful cause, consistently creating experiences that validated his expectations of financial struggle. The transformation began when David encountered a seemingly paradoxical idea. To attract abundance, he needed to find a way to feel abundant before the external circumstances changed. This felt impossible at first. How could he feel abundant when his bank account suggested otherwise? But David began to experiment with gratitude for what he did have: his health, his skills, the roof over his head, the food on his table. Gradually, he expanded this practice. Instead of cursing traffic, he felt grateful for owning a car, Instead of resenting his small apartment, he appreciated having a private space in a world where many had none. Instead of focusing on what his salary couldn't buy, he marveled at what it could provide. This wasn't about positive thinking or denying reality. It was about shifting his energetic frequency from scarcity to abundance by recognizing the abundance that already existed in his life. The sacred thread responded to these new causes with remarkable effects. Within weeks, David noticed he was having different kinds of conversations about opportunities rather than obstacles, about possibilities rather than problems. People began offering him freelance projects. An old contact reached out with a job lead. A business idea that had been dormant suddenly seemed viable and exciting. David's financial situation transformed, not because he worked harder or got luckier, but because he aligned his inner state with the abundance he desired to experience. The sacred thread simply delivered experiences that matched his new energetic frequency. Now that you've seen the sacred thread at work in real lives, let me share with you the practical framework the Atlanteans used to harness this power consciously. This is not theory. This is technology of consciousness that has been tested across millennia of human experience. The Atlanteans knew that unconscious causes create unconscious effects. Most people live their entire lives reacting to circumstances without ever recognizing that those circumstances are the perfect effects of their own previous thoughts, words, and actions. Your first task is to become a detective of your own consciousness. Begin by examining your current life circumstances with new eyes. Whatever situation you find yourself in, whether you love it or hate it, exists as the effect of previous causes. This isn't about blame or judgment. It's about reclaiming your power by recognizing the connection between inner states and outer experiences. Choose one area of your life where you'd like to see change. Perhaps it's your health, your relationships, your career, or your finances. Now, ask yourself these questions with complete honesty. What thoughts do I think most often about this area of my life? What emotions do I feel most frequently when I focus on this situation? What words do I speak, both to others and to myself, about this topic? What actions do I take or avoid taking in relation to this area? Write down your answers. Look for patterns. The Atlanteans understood that our predominant mental and emotional states become the causes that shape our external reality. If you discover that your thoughts about money are primarily fearful, your emotions about relationships are mostly disappointed, or your words about your health are consistently negative, you've identified the causes that are creating your current effects. This awareness alone is profoundly powerful. You cannot change what you cannot see. Once you recognize the causal patterns operating in your life, you gain the ability to consciously modify them. The second step requires you to become clear about what you actually want to experience, not just what you want to avoid or escape. The Atlanteans discovered that the universe responds more powerfully to positive intention than to resistance. When you focus on what you don't want, you're still focusing on it. And focus is a form of causation. For each area where you desire change, write a clear description of the effects you want to create. Be specific. Be vivid. But most importantly, describe these desired effects as if they were already real. Instead of "I want to lose weight," write "I am vibrantly healthy, energetic, and comfortable in my body." Instead of "I want to find love," write "I am in a relationship characterized by mutual respect, deep connection, and genuine partnership." Instead of "I want more money," write "I live with financial abundance, making decisions from freedom rather than fear, contributing my gifts generously, while receiving compensation that reflects my value." This isn't about positive thinking or wishful fantasy. This is about programming your consciousness with clear intentions that can serve as powerful causes. The Atlanteans understood that unclear desires produce unclear results. When you don't know what you want, the sacred thread delivers whatever matches your predominant vibration, which is often exactly what you don't want. The third step is alignment, harmonizing inner and outer. Here is where most people stumble and where the Atlanteans excelled. True causation requires alignment between your inner state and your outer expression. You cannot consistently think thoughts of scarcity and expect to create abundance. You cannot harbor emotions of resentment and expect to attract loving relationships. You cannot speak words of limitation and expect to experience expansion. This step requires you to gradually shift your internal landscape to match the reality you wish to create. Begin with your thoughts. The Atlanteans developed a practice they called thought gardening, treating your mind like fertile soil that will grow whatever seeds you plant there. Whenever you notice yourself thinking thoughts that don't align with your desired effects, gently redirect your attention. If you catch yourself thinking, "I'll never be able to afford that," consciously choose to think instead, "I am learning to create financial abundance in my life." This isn't about forcing positive thoughts or denying negative emotions. It's about becoming intentional with the mental causes you're setting in motion. Next, tend to your emotions. The Atlanteans knew that emotions are powerful creative forces. They're the energy that gives momentum to your thoughts and transforms them into physical reality. Find ways to genuinely feel the emotions associated with your desired effects. If you want to experience abundance, practice gratitude for what you already have until you feel genuinely appreciative. If you want to attract love, cultivate self-love until you feel worthy and complete. If you want to create health, focus on vitality and appreciate your body's remarkable abilities until you feel energized and alive. Finally, align your words and actions. Speak as if your desired reality is already unfolding. Take actions that someone living your desired life would take, even if they seem small or symbolic. The sacred thread responds to congruence when your thoughts, emotions, words, and actions all point in the same direction, its power amplifies exponentially. The final step is perhaps the most important. Understanding that small, consistent causes create larger effects than sporadic bursts of intense effort. The Atlanteans compared this to the power of water over stone. A massive wave might move a boulder, but gentle, persistent water will eventually carve the Grand Canyon. Your transformation doesn't require dramatic gestures or perfect execution. It requires consistency in applying these principles day after day, moment after moment. Commit to small, daily practices that align with your desired effects. 5 minutes of morning gratitude to cultivate abundance consciousness. Choosing one loving thought about yourself each time you pass a mirror. Speaking one encouraging word to someone each day to attract encouragement into your own life. Taking one small action each day toward your goals, regardless of whether you feel motivated. The Atlanteans understood something that modern society has forgotten. Small causes, repeated consistently over time, compound into effects far greater than their individual impact. A single positive thought has minimal power, but a positive thought repeated daily for a month creates a mental habit. That habit, maintained for a year, transforms your entire mental landscape. That transformed consciousness, sustained for several years, revolutionizes your entire life experience. Remember, you're not trying to force change or manipulate outcomes. You're simply choosing to set different causes in motion and allowing the sacred thread to weave them into new patterns of experience. This is how the Atlanteans lived, not as victims of circumstance, but as conscious creators, partnering with the fundamental forces of existence to shape reality through the power of aligned intention and consistent action. Now we venture into the deeper currents of the sacred thread. The advanced understanding that even among the Atlanteans was shared only with those who had mastered the foundational principles. The Atlanteans discovered that when you consciously create positive causes in one area of your life, it doesn't just affect that specific area. It displaces negative patterns throughout your entire existence. Think of your life as a vessel filled with water. If you pour in clear, pure water at one end, it doesn't just stay in that corner. It gradually displaces all the murky water throughout the entire container. This is why someone who begins exercising regularly often finds their relationships improving, their career advancing, and their financial situation stabilizing, even though they only focused on their physical health. The discipline, self-respect, and vitality they cultivated through exercise became causes that created effects in every area of their life. Conversely, the Atlanteans observed that tolerating negative patterns in one area tends to contaminate other areas. Someone who accepts dishonesty in their business dealings often finds deception creeping into their personal relationships. Someone who neglects their physical health frequently discovers their mental clarity and emotional stability declining as well. This understanding led the Atlanteans to focus on what they called keystone causes. fundamental shifts in consciousness that would naturally transform multiple areas of life simultaneously. Perhaps the most profound insight the Atlanteans gained was that the sacred thread operates not just through space, but through time in ways that challenge linear thinking. They discovered that causes set in motion today could produce effects that ripple backward and forward through what we call time, creating what they termed destiny loops, patterns where future effects reach back to influence past causes, and past causes continue to unfold effects long after their apparent conclusion. This explains why people often experience what seems like perfect timing, meeting exactly the right person at exactly the right moment, receiving opportunities just when they're needed most, having solutions appear precisely when problems reach their peak. The Atlanteans understood that when you align with the sacred thread consciously, you don't just change your future. You activate latent potentials that have been waiting in your past for the right moment to manifest. This is why personal transformation often feels like remembering rather than learning. Why breakthrough moments carry a sense of coming home to something you've always known but temporarily forgotten. The most advanced Atlantean practitioners discovered that individual mastery of the sacred thread naturally extends into collective influence. As you become more conscious of the causes you're setting in motion, you begin to recognize your connection to the vast web of causation that includes every other conscious being. They realized that your personal transformation contributes to the transformation of the whole, just as the whole influences your personal experience. This isn't metaphorical. It's an observable pattern in the fabric of reality itself. When you consciously choose love over fear, gratitude over resentment, generosity over selfishness, you don't just change your own experience. You add threads of light to the collective tapestry of human consciousness. This is why periods of widespread awakening seem to accelerate exponentially. Each person who masters the sacred thread makes it easier for others to access the same understanding. Just as each person who remains unconscious contributes to the patterns of confusion and limitation, the Atlanteans discovered a profound paradox. The more consciously you work with the sacred thread, the less attached you become to specific outcomes, yet the more precisely your intentions manifest. This happens because true mastery involves aligning not just with your personal desires, but with the deeper intelligence that governs the universe itself. You begin to trust that whatever unfolds is perfect for your growth and evolution, even when it doesn't match your limited understanding of what you thought you wanted. This doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up your preferences. It means holding your intentions lightly while taking aligned action consistently, trusting that the sacred thread will weave circumstances together in ways far more elegant and beneficial than your conscious mind could ever orchestrate. Master practitioners among the Atlanteans reached a state where they could see several moves ahead in the cosmic game of cause and effect. They recognized that apparent setbacks were often hidden setups, that temporary failures were frequently necessary preparation for lasting success, and that what seemed like delays were actually divine timing, ensuring all elements aligned perfectly. The deepest insight the Atlanteans gained was that the sacred thread operates through the fundamental force they called unified compassion. The recognition that every being is both individual and interconnected, separate and unified, personal and universal. They discovered that causes rooted in genuine compassion for yourself and others create effects that transcend the limitations of personal ego and tap into the unlimited creative power of existence itself. This is why acts of genuine kindness often return magnified, far beyond mathematical possibility. Why forgiveness can heal not just relationships, but physical ailments. Why serving others' genuine needs mysteriously fulfills your own deepest desires. The Atlanteans understood that when you align your personal will with universal compassion, you become a conduit for forces far greater than individual consciousness. You become a co-creator with the intelligence that maintains galaxies and nurtures the growth of every living thing. And so, we return to where we began. Though you are no longer the same person who started listening to these words, something has awakened. Something has remembered. You see, the moment you truly understand the sacred thread, you realize that finding this knowledge was not an accident. It was not luck. It was not even your conscious searching that brought you here. It was the effect of a cause you set in motion long ago. Perhaps when you first questioned whether there was more to life than what you could see. Perhaps when you first chose love over fear in some small but crucial moment. Perhaps when you first glimpsed that you are far more powerful than the world taught you to believe. The Atlanteans knew that wisdom appears in your life precisely when you're ready to use it, not a moment before, not a moment after. The sacred thread has been weaving the circumstances that brought you to this understanding across days, months, perhaps even years. Every struggle you faced, every question you've asked, every moment you felt there must be something more. All of it has been preparation for this moment of recognition. You now hold in your consciousness what the Atlanteans considered the most precious treasure. The understanding that you are not a victim of circumstance, but a creator of destiny. Every thought you think, every word you speak, every action you take is a seed planted in the infinite field of possibility. But knowledge without application remains merely interesting philosophy. The sacred thread responds not to what you know, but to what you do with what you know. Starting tonight, no, starting right now, you have the opportunity to consciously set new causes in motion, to think one new thought that aligns with the life you wish to create, to feel one emotion that resonates with your deepest desires, to speak one word that carries the energy of your highest vision, to take one action, however small, that demonstrates your commitment to living as a conscious creator rather than an unconscious reactor. The Atlanteans understood that transformation happens not through massive efforts, but through the accumulated power of countless small aligned choices. You don't need to change everything at once. You need only to begin. Begin with gratitude for what is, even as you set intentions for what could be. Begin with compassion for who you've been, even as you choose who you're becoming. Begin with trust in the process, even when you can't see the full picture. Remember Sarah, who transformed her relationships by transforming her relationship with herself. Remember Marcus, who changed his career by changing his daily choices. Remember Elena, who healed her body by healing her thoughts and emotions. Remember David, who attracted abundance by first recognizing the abundance already present in his life. Your story is waiting to be written, not by fate or chance or circumstance, but by the conscious application of the same eternal principle that guided the Atlanteans in their moment of greatest wisdom. The sacred thread has brought you this knowledge because it's time for you to step into your role as a conscious creator. Time to stop wondering why things happen to you and start understanding how things happen through you. Time to stop being the effect and start being the cause. In the coming days, as you apply what you've learned, you'll begin to notice the patterns. You'll see how your inner shifts create outer changes. You'll watch as the universe responds to your new level of consciousness with opportunities, relationships, and experiences that match your elevated vision. And when that happens, when you see the sacred thread operating in your own life with unmistakable clarity, I invite you to leave one phrase in the comments below. Just 4 simple words that will let me know you've made the connection. I see the pattern now. Because once you do see it, once you truly understand that your life is not happening to you, but through you, everything changes. Not someday, not gradually, right now. The Atlanteans are gone, but their wisdom lives on in those ready to receive it. You are one of those people. This is your moment. This is your choice. The sacred thread is waiting for your conscious participation. What cause will you set in motion today?